Hi everyone, and welcome to this webinar on the Carbon Minds database. I'm Arne Kittlin, I'm Managing Director and Co-founder at Carbon Minds, and I have the pleasure to give you an introduction to our database. Why did we build it? How did we build it? What are the typical use cases? And how can you get started with Carbon Minds data? Whenever you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to use the chat function. I know it's an on-demand webinar, but your messages will get forwarded to us and we will be in touch as soon as possible. Before we jump into the database, just a quick introduction of who we are. And in short, Carbon Minds is all about data. It's all about sustainability. We are the providers of what is today the world's most comprehensive lifecycle database for chemicals and plastics. So it's the data that our customers use for their product carbon footprint calculations, lifecycle assessments, Scope 3 assessments, or to inform their climate strategy. On top, we have a service and training business where we help with the implementation of our data, with filling data gaps, but where we can also do the assessments for our customers, ranging from PCF and LCA studies to more complex net zero pathways for the industries, as well as training programs for sustainability teams. And when we work with our customers, we see that many of them have certain challenges in common, and these challenges are often related to the provision of the data that they need for their assessments. So if you think about the emissions of a product or of a company, the first thing that often comes up in our head is maybe the smoke that is coming out of the chimneys of our production sites, or the potentially large electricity bills. And of course, the so-called direct and energy-related emissions, they are an important part of the emissions that our products or companies are causing. If we take the average value for the chemical industry, it should be around 24%. But this also means that the by far larger part of the emissions comes from both the up and downstream supply chain. So it comes from the extraction of the raw materials that we're using. It comes from all the production steps that connect the raw materials with the intermediate that we are buying. It's also from the use of the products or the end of life. And these supply chains, they are long, they are complex, there are many players, many different production technologies involved. So here, understanding these supply chains, getting visibility into the emissions in this area is really key to reliable reporting and efficient climate action or environmental strategy in general. But at the same time, it's challenging. If we just look into the numbers and focus on chemicals and plastics, we can see that about 23,000 different substances are used today. We used REACH registrations as an indicator here. And if we combine these numbers with the chemicals that are covered in, let's say, all databases that we have put together, we can see that usually only a smaller fraction is covered, and also the suppliers where we might buy the products from, they usually cannot provide the data for all their products. Yeah, and this leaves us with, first of all, structural blind spots in our emission inventories, which could be strategic liability, as they might cover the most important hotspots. But at the same time, we also have a consistency gap. If we collect data from different data sources, there might be different underlying methodologies that lead to very different data qualities. Yeah, so data is not always compatible. And if we work with data that are based on different methodologies, the interpretation might be difficult because the data is not comparable, so there's a risk of failed audits and even reputational risk. And thirdly, when collecting data, for example, from databases, we are often faced with highly generic data, for example, global averages for a specific product. And these generic data points, they cause what we like to call the actionability gap, because they are hiding all the variabilities in production chains, which are at the same time our levers for reduction. And these gaps, they are a real barrier for reliable reporting and maybe even more important for efficient emission reductions. So we can say that companies are often flying blind in the sustainability transition simply because they are lacking visibility on the most important part of their emission profiles, on the supply chain emissions. So at Carbon Minds, to put it very simple, we made it our mission to make emissions visible. So what we did is we built our Carbon Minds data suite, which first of all consists of two data products. Our CM Chemicals database. It's a large database, many different substances covered, all production regions worldwide, granularity down to the technology level. Yeah, so this is a database that really includes thousands of different products and gives you the coverage that you need on an already very high, highly granular level. We can combine this data with our supplier footprint analytics data, where we can even show the difference between the product carbon footprints, in this case, between different suppliers, and this makes things really actionable when it comes to environmental procurement. But as I said before, there are many different substances in the world, and even with the world's largest life cycle database for chemicals and plastic, there will always be data gaps at the moment. So we can combine this with a service where we actively close these data gaps. For you, we can map your data needs with what is already available in the database, but also in our development pipeline for new substances to be included soon. We can help you close data gaps through proxy generations. We have different proxy suggestion engines that can be used free of charge. Finally, for everything that is important, we can model the missing data for you. Yeah, and this is what we call our Carbon Minds data suite. So it's not just the database, it's an entire data system that provides the data, but also helps you close data gaps. If we now look into our database, what will you find? I brought a small example, and it's the example of propylene production. And first of all, you find values for the average consumption and also the average production for every product for all production regions in the world. And this really matters because, for example, in this view for polypropylene, if you compare the country average values with the global average, you can see there's easily a factor 2 in between of them. So if you buy from one of the least emission intensive countries, you might be overestimating your impact by 100%. And it's the same if you buy from an emission intensive country, the global average will be far too low. But as you know, there are also many suppliers in every country, and they might use different technologies. So with our database, you can break these emissions down to the technologies that are really used in the country. And if we take the example of China as the world's largest producer for propylene, you can see there are quite a number of technologies used, which are also using different feedstocks. So for example, on the left, you have technologies that are using lighter hydrocarbons. On the right, you have coal-based production technologies. And this feedstock choice really has a massive impact on emissions. So if you drill down to the technologies that are used in a country, you can easily find a factor 10 between the different technologies and different plants that are used not in pilot stage, but really at a world scale production volume. And finally, I mentioned our supplier footprint analytics. This would add the supplier view to the data. There, every column that you see in this diagram with thousands of columns represent one company name, one supplier in China. And here you can really compare the carbon footprints of the different supply options. So why does it matter? What are the benefits that we can gain from this? Well, for sustainability teams, first of all, the large coverage of the database in connection with the services to close data gaps make it very easy to find the right data quickly and for all the substances that you need. This in turn translates to advantages on the company level, simply because your company will get much quicker in replying to customer requests for environmental information. At the same time, the granularity of the data that I showed you makes it much more straightforward for sustainability teams to systematically look for improvement options in emissions in their supply chain. This in turn translates into an advantage on the company level because it helps you to lower the emissions of your product, become more competitive in markets where low carbon products are requested. And finally, compliance. Our data is compliant with major methodologies. It's certified by the TÜV Rheinland every year, so you can be sure that by using our data, you're using input data that is consistent for the methodologies that you need. And this in turn translates into trust in your assessment. It helps you pass audits easily, and finally it increases your reputation as a company that really takes it serious and provides reliable data and assessments. If you want to see how this data can be put into practice, we've prepared a couple of inspirations for you. These are success stories or case studies from our customers: AVN, Bayer, Brenntag, Henkel, Lanxess and Sipchems. They all have slightly different use cases, and yeah, it might be interesting for you to see or to understand how this data might fit to your business. So if you're interested in receiving one of these case studies, you should see the small interaction on your window now. Just click on the case study and we're happy to send it to you. And if you would like to learn more about Carmine's data, in particular how much of your data needs we can cover at what quality, I would suggest we get in touch and we are happy to analyze this for you. We've built a very easy way to do it. We call it our mapping service. It works in a way that you just send us a list of substances for which you need data. These substances need to be identified via the CAS number, the chemical identification number, and please feel free to do it for thousands or 10,000s of substances that you might need. And we will map this with our database, with our proxy suggestion engine, and we will come up with a full mapping report where we show you exactly which substances we can cover directly with processes in our database, or which processes that we can deliver on a very short notice because they are already in our development pipeline. For those substances where we don't have the data yet, we can suggest the best available proxies. We have different methods, for example, mapping by chemical similarity, where we find the most similar molecule in our database, or via HS codes. So those are codes used in international trade that describe clusters of similar chemicals. And finally, for everything that is important, we can suggest ways of doing customer mappings. And if you're interested in this mapping service and to receive your own mapping report, or if you simply would like to get in touch with us, I would like to invite you to use the interaction that you should now see on your screen to let us know what your preferred next steps are. And with this, I would like to say thank you for watching this webinar, if you made it until here. And yeah, we hope to get in touch with you. Thank you and goodbye.